Hello, little dreamers. Close your eyes now and rest your head softly against the pillow. Let your breath grow slower, in and out, like the tide of a quiet ocean. You are safe, you are warm, you are cozy. And tonight, we are about to wander, together, into the haunted dreams of the land of Ooh. Now, imagine the moon hanging low in the sky. It glows pale and silver, the way a candle flickers in a forgotten castle. The air hums with mystery and the night feels alive. This is where our story begins. The story of a boy named Finn. The arrival. Once upon a time, before heroes had names, there was only silence and the sound of wind moving through trees. It was in this strange silence that Finn appeared. A baby left in the woods, with eyes wide open, not afraid, not crying, only watching, as though the shadows were already his friends. The forest around him was quiet, but if you listened closely, you could hear soft whispers, the rustling of leaves that spoke in haunted tones, the creak of old branches bending like bones, and a gentle hum, as if the night itself was rocking him to sleep. The haunted forest. The woods were not like other woods. They were filled with glowing fungi, soft lights pulsing in the dark like sleepy lanterns. The ground shimmered faintly with dew, and sometimes a shadow would pass, not of an animal, not of a bird, but of something older, something that lived between the cracks of the world. Still, the baby did not fear. He cooed softly, as if he already knew he belonged to this haunted land. And perhaps the forest knew it too. It leaned closer, its branches swaying like arms cradling him. A lullaby whispered, in voices only half heard. A guardian appears. From the darkness came a gentle step. Not a monster, not a ghost, but a creature who would change Finn's life forever. It was a dog with eyes shining golden, and a presence both silly and magical. This was Jake's family, and with them, Finn was found, not abandoned, but chosen. Jake's parents took the boy in, wrapped him warmly, and carried him out of the haunted woods. And as they walked, the forest seemed to sigh, a sound like pages turning in an ancient book. The whispers faded, but they did not disappear. They followed, soft and secret, as though watching over the child who would one day be a hero. Dreamy transition. And so Finn's life began, not in sunlight, but in shadows and mysteries. The haunted woods had whispered to him, and though he was only a baby, the echo would stay with him forever. Now, little dreamer, feel your breath slow again, in and out. Imagine the forest drifting away, the pale glow fading, the boy sleeping safely in his new home. Everything is calm, everything is quiet. Drift with Finn into sleep, for this is only the beginning. The next part of his story awaits, in the haunted lullabies of childhood. The night was quiet in the land of Ooh. A breeze moved softly over rolling hills, carrying the smell of old wood and faraway rain. Inside a small wooden home, a boy was growing. Finn, no longer a baby, but still small enough to be cradled by dreams. The house itself seemed to breathe. Its walls creaked gently at night, like the sighs of a sleepy giant. The floor hummed when the wind pressed against the windows, and sometimes, when the moonlight was just right, shadows on the walls would stretch a little too far, curling at the edges, as though they wished to step into the room. But Finn was never afraid. Not truly. He would lie on his straw-filled bed, eyes wide and curious, listening to the whispers. They came from corners of the house, from the space between floorboards, from the hush of leaves brushing against the window. Soft voices, never loud, never sharp, but always there. The whispers told stories. Stories of the forest he had left behind, of creatures that slept beneath the roots, and rivers that sang in hollow tones. Sometimes Finn thought the whispers were guiding him. Sometimes he thought they were only lonely. Jake was always there, snoring softly at his side, a comfort that turned the haunted quiet into something safe. The dog's golden body stretched and curled, radiating warmth. And whenever a shadow grew too bold, Jake twitched his ears, and the darkness shrank away. Days passed into nights. Nights melted back into days, and the boy learned to live between them, half in sunlight, half in twilight. He played, he laughed. He learned to run through meadows, and yet always the strange world whispered to him. In the tall grass, he would hear faint laughter. Not Jake's, not his own. Something older, drifting like smoke. When he splashed in clear rivers, ripples carried faint words, syllables that never made sense, but always felt like they were meant for him. And in the quiet after rain, when the air smelled of stone and earth, Finn sometimes saw shapes in the mist. Long, bending shapes that seemed to watch and then disappear. At first, these things were only curiosities. To a child, the world itself is always alive, always breathing. But deep in his heart, Finn began to understand that ooh was more than play. It was wondrous, yes, but it was also haunted. Sometimes at night, he dreamt of the forest where he had been found, the glowing fungi, the shadows that moved without sound, the lullaby of branches bending like arms. The dreams were not frightening. They were heavy, slow, full of a strange comfort, as though the forest was calling him back. He would wake in the dark, his hand reaching out, grasping only the cool air. Jake would stir, pressing against him, and Finn would smile, safe again, but not untouched. The dreams lingered like cobwebs, soft and clinging. As the boy grew, so too did the whispers. They followed him into fields, into caves, into the silent spaces where no bird sang. They were never harsh, never cruel, only patient, as though waiting. And so his childhood became a weaving of two worlds. The warm, living world of play and brotherhood, and the haunted, hidden world of secrets and shadows. Together they shaped him. Together they whispered his name. Finn. 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 The sound carried through the still air at night, through dreams and through silence, until even his heartbeat seemed to echo it. Finn, the boy of light. Finn, the boy of shadows. Finn, who belonged to both. And as he closed his eyes each night, wrapped in the comfort of Jake's presence, the voices grew softer, fading like smoke into starlight, promising more, always more, in the chapters of his life yet to come. The moon drifted high above the land of Ur, its pale light spilling across valleys and forests, making shadows longer, deeper, stranger. In those shadows, the boy named Finn began to test his heart. He was still young, still small, but something stirred inside him whenever the night grew quiet. A need to explore, a need to step into the dark, to see what lived beyond the glow of the lantern. The whispers still followed him. They curled at the edges of his dreams, soft voices that hummed like faraway bells. And sometimes, in the silence of the evening, He thought they dared him, calling him forward, gently urging him to take one step more. One night, while Jake dozed by the fireplace, Finn slipped outside. The air was cool, sweet with the smell of grass, but beneath it was another scentwood stone, old wood, and something faintly metallic, like forgotten keys rusting in the ground. He carried a stick, nothing more, but to him it was a sword, a blade sharp enough to face anything the night could bring. He held it steady, his breath slow, his heart quick. The world outside was different at night. The meadow he had run through by day now seemed endless, the grass tall and whispering. Each blade leaned toward him, like 1,000 watching eyes. The trees were tall silhouettes, their branches bending down, stretching thin fingers toward him. He walked slowly, his small feet pressing into the damp earth. Each step made a sound louder than he expected. Each sound seemed to echo, yet he did not turn back. His grip tightened on the stick. He whispered to himself, "I am not afraid." The forest seemed to hear. Its branches stirred. A hush fell deeper, like a breath being held. And then, a shape appeared. It was not beast nor ghost. It was only the wind pushing shadows into form. But to Finn's eyes, the figure was real, tall and swaying, with hollow spaces where its eyes should be. He froze, his heart beating in his throat. The whispers came again. Not cruel, not harsh, but steady. They filled the air around him, threads of sound weaving together. "Go forward. Do not fear. You belong here." So Finn raised his stick. He took a step closer, and the shadow dissolved. Nothing more than night on bark, nothing more than moonlight stretching thin. He breathed out slowly. Relief washed over him, but so did something else, a spark. The spark of courage. The knowing that sometimes fear is only the dark playing tricks. From that night, Finn's heart began to change. He returned again and again, to the forest, to the caves, to the places where shadows lingered. Each time, he carried his little stick, his pretend sword, and each time, he grew braver. Sometimes the forest tested him. Strange sounds rose from hollow logs, echoes like laughter in empty rooms. Faint lights flickered between the trees, never close enough to touch, always just beyond reach. Once he thought he saw glowing eyes peering from under a rock. But when he leaned closer, there was nothing, only moss, only stone, only the soft hum of the earth. Yet these things did not drive him away. They called him deeper. The night itself became his teacher, and courage became his companion. Jake would sometimes join him, padding beside him through the grass, tail swaying, ears twitching. Jake would joke, stretching his body into silly shapes, chasing shadows until they scattered. But Finn would watch. He would stand tall, stick in hand, eyes wide, listening for whispers the dog could not hear. And when the whispers came, they filled him with a strange warmth. Not of fire, not of sunlight, but of belonging, as though the darkness itself had chosen him, as though the haunted land had marked him as its own. Each night ended the same way. Finn would return home, curl into his bed, Jake's steady breathing beside him. The whispers would soften, retreating like shadows at dawn, and sleep would take him. But in his dreams, the courage remained. He would stand on mountains made of bone. He would cross rivers of silver light. He would fight shadows with nothing but his wooden sword. And each time, The voices whispered. Soft, endless, patient. Bravery into the dark. Bravery in the silence. Bravery even in sleep. And so the boy grew, not only in strength, but in spirit. He was still small, still young, but he was already becoming what he was meant to be. A hero born of both light and shadow, carved by whispers, shaped by haunted nights. The seasons turned slowly in the land of Ooh. Days passed, nights stretched long, and the boy who once carried only a wooden stick now felt ready for something greater. One evening, beneath the glow of a waning moon, Finn found himself drawn to an old chest resting in the corner of the house. The chest creaked when touched, its hinges groaning like a tired voice. Inside, beneath blankets and old cloth, lay a sword. Not shiny, not new, but old, worn, its blade carrying the hush of many years. He reached out carefully. The moment his fingers brushed the hilt, the room seemed to grow quieter. The fire dimmed. Jake's snores slowed. Even the night air outside paused in its wandering. The sword was not heavy, yet it carried a weight, not of iron, but of memory. Finn felt it in his chest, a vibration, a low hum that whispered, as though the blade remembered voices long since vanished. He lifted it slowly. The edge caught the faint light of the moon, and for a heartbeat, the shadows in the room seemed to shift. Figures stirred on the walls, as tall and thin, their heads bowing toward the boy. But when he blinked, they were gone. Still, he knew, the sword was not silent. Not truly. It was alive in some quiet way, alive with stories, with echoes of battles, with sighs of ghosts who had once held it. From that night forward, the sword became his companion. He carried it into the forest, where the trees whispered his name. He carried it to the rivers, where the water glimmered with strange reflections. And always, when the blade touched moonlight, it hummed. A sound too soft for anyone else to hear, but clear to Finn. The whispers of the forest now met the whispers of the steel. Together they formed a strange chorus, not frightening, not cruel, but ancient, as though the boy had stepped into a song that had been playing long before he was born. Some nights, he would rest the sword beside his bed. As his eyes grew heavy, the hum would soften, rising and falling with his breath. And in dreams, he walked through halls of stone, lit by torches that flickered blue. Figures cloaked in shadow bowed as he passed, their voices echoing, their words unknown, but their meaning clear. The sword had chosen him. Other nights, the dreams grew darker. He stood in a battlefield of silence, the ground covered in ash, the sky cracked with pale light. The sword pulsed in his hands, not in anger, but in warning. He would wake with his heart racing, the whispers of the blade still clinging to him, like cobwebs in the dawn. Yet even then, he felt no fear. The haunted edge of the sword was not meant to scare him away. It was meant to guide him, to shape him, to remind him that courage is not only for games in the daylight, it is also for the shadows. Jake sometimes teased him, stretching into shapes, pretending to duel. Finn would laugh, swinging the blade carefully, the sound of steel cutting air sharp and clear. But inside, he knew it was more than play. The sword was a secret teacher, its hum reminding him of paths he could not yet see. The whispers of Ooh had given him courage. The sword's whispers gave him purpose. Together, they wove into him a strength that grew each night, each dream, each haunted breath of wind that passed over his window. And so, The boy slept with the sword close, its silent hum carrying him deeper into dreams. Dreams of battles yet to come. Dreams of shadows yet to face. Dreams of the haunted land that had never stopped watching him. In the quiet of his room, with the moon drifting higher, Finn slept peacefully. But the sword did not sleep. It waited. Patient, steady, silent, yet never silent. The boy was no longer alone in his wandering. Finn had his sword, he had his courage, and most of all, he had his companions. The land of Oo was wide, filled with strange kingdoms, and in each corner of it, he found someone who would change his story. Princesses in tall towers, creatures made of candy, magicians who wrapped themselves in cloaks of stars. Each one brought the color to his world, a brightness that softened the weight of haunted whispers. But Oo was never only bright. Even the sweetest lands carried shadows. Even the kindest faces had mysteries. And Finn learned to walk between the two light and shadow, friendship and fear. He met Bubblegum, whose smile glowed like the morning sun. Her words were gentle, yet behind her eyes lay secrets heavy as stone. Still, she welcomed him, and her presence filled his heart with warmth. In her kingdom of sugar and light, Finn felt safe, yet the whispers still followed, curling between candy walls, reminding him that even sweetness can hold silence. Then came Marceline, the vampire queen. Her laughter echoed like a song played in an empty hall, half joy, half sorrow. She carried a bass like a weapon, and her music stirred shadows from the corners. Yet she was kind, lonely but kind. In her haunted songs, Finn found comfort, as though the two of them shared a secret bond of love of the dark and a longing for the light. There was BMO, too, the small machine with a voice like a child. BMO's laughter was bright, its games endless. Yet sometimes, in the stillness of night, when Finn closed his eyes, he swore he heard BMO whispering in languages not meant for him. Faint words, like codes, like echoes from another time. And though he did not understand, he felt no fear. For even the strangest whispers can be friends. With Jake, always Jake. Finn shared his deepest adventures. The dog's body stretched and twisted, turning danger into play, turning haunted woods into playgrounds. And yet, sometimes when Jake laughed, the shadows held their breath, as though they, too, adored him. Together, these companions shaped Finn's days. They walked through glowing meadows, through forests where eyes blinked from the trees, through mountains where the wind howled like ghosts. They laughed, they played, they fought off creatures both silly and strange. But at night, when the world grew still, the truth always returned. Oo was haunted. Even in company, Finn could hear the soft calls of the unseen. They lingered at the edge of his friendships, never cruel, never jealous, only watching, as if the land itself wished to join the circle of his friends. Sometimes, when laughter echoed too loud, the air grew cold. Candles flickered, and Finn felt the land listening, not with malice, not with hunger, but with the patience of something very old, something that had seen friends come and go, and yet remained. His companions of light made him strong. His companions of shadow made him wise. Together they taught him balance. He was no longer just a child playing in haunted woods. He was becoming a hero. Not because he held a sword, not because he faced danger, but because he learned to love both the light and the dark. When he closed his eyes at night, the memories of his companions drifted around him. Bubblegum's careful smile, Marceline's haunted song, BMO's gentle games, Jake's golden warmth, and behind them, always behind them, the whispers. The quiet chorus of ooh, reminding him that even friendships are wrapped in mystery. And so he slept, surrounded by both laughter and silence, wrapped in the arms of both light and shadow. The night sky stretched wide above the land of ooh. Stars scattered across the darkness like silver dust, each one glowing faintly, as if whispering to the world below. Beneath their light, Finn's adventures grew longer, his steps carrying him farther, his courage guiding him into the hours when most dreamed. The moon was his lantern, sometimes full and golden, sometimes thin and sharp, but always watching, always casting its pale glow over his path. When the moon rose, so too did Finn's curiosity. The world at night was not the same as the world in day. It was slower, softer, stranger, a place of secrets waiting to be uncovered. With Jake at his side, and sometimes his other companions too, Finn would wander into the dark. The forest shivered with whispers, the rivers gleamed like silver threads, and the mountains stood like silent giants, keeping watch over the land. On some nights, they followed fireflies that glowed too brightly, their light almost unnatural, like sparks from forgotten magic. The fireflies led them through fields of tall grass, where the blades swayed like ocean waves, and shadows drifted just out of sight. On other nights, they entered caves where water dripped endlessly, each drop echoing like a heartbeat. The air was cool, thick with the scent of stone. Inside, their footsteps stirred sleeping bats, their wings unfolding like black curtains in the dark. But Finn held steady, his sword humming faintly, and the bats never harmed him. They only circled once, like guardians, before vanishing into the night. The moonlit quests were not only battles, sometimes they were puzzles. Once Finn found a stone door hidden deep in the woods. Its surface was carved with spirals, symbols that glowed faintly in the moonlight. He pressed his hand to it, and for a moment, the stone grew warm beneath his palm. The symbols flickered, whispered, and then faded away, leaving the door forever closed. He never spoke of it, but he remembered the hum of its silence. Other nights, they walked through ruins. Crumbling towers leaned against the stars, their windows hollow, their stones covered in ivy. The wind whistled through them, not like air, but like voices. Echoes of people who had once lived, once loved, once vanished. Finn listened, his heart steady. And though he did not know the words, he felt their sorrow, their patience, their waiting. Sometimes the quests led them to joy. Fields of glowing mushrooms that pulsed with soft light, turning the night into a dreamscape. Trees that sang when touched, their branches humming gentle notes, as though the forest itself was an instrument. And rivers that shone with the reflection of the stars, so clear, so endless, that it felt as though Finn was walking on the sky itself. But always, the nights of childhood were gentle. Laughter echoed in small rooms. Candles glowed low, and dreams drifted easily between waking and sleep. For Finn, those nights were filled with warmth, yet also with something more, shadows that stayed longer than they should, shadows that seemed to remember. His home was small but alive. The walls creaked when the wind passed, and the floor whispered under his steps. At night, when the fire grew quiet, the house itself seemed to hum, a low lullaby of wood and stone. To most, it would have been ordinary. But to Finn, each sound carried meaning. Each whisper felt like a voice. He laughed often, running with Jake through halls and fields, their games loud enough to shake the silence away. They played heroes and monsters, chasing each other until they tumbled into soft grass, their giggles floating up to the moon. The night seemed brighter with their joy. Yet when the laughter faded, the shadows leaned closer. Sometimes, after play, when sleep crept upon him, Finn would lie still, listening. He heard the gentle rhythm of Jake's snores, the crackle of fire cooling into ash, and beneath it all, the faintest of murmurs, soft, steady, like voices too old to be understood. He did not fear them, not yet. To him, the whispers were part of the night, as natural as stars, as ordinary as the wind. Still, they lingered. They never left. And sometimes, they spoke his name. The shadows in his room were playful at first, shapes that stretched across the walls, forming creatures made of light and imagination. Dragons, towers, knights with tall spears. But now and then, those shapes would not vanish with the candle's flame. They stayed, tall, patient, bending at the edges of his vision. When he blinked, they faded. When he opened his eyes again, they waited. On such nights, Finn clutched his blanket tight. The warmth of fabric and the nearness of Jake kept him steady. And in his heart, he whispered back to the silence, as if to say, "I hear you too." The world outside was wide and strange, but even within the safety of home, the land of Uru reached for him. Its magic, its memory, its haunted lullabies. All of it pressed gently against his dreams. When he finally closed his eyes, the whispers did not stop. They followed him into sleep. They curled into his dreams, turning games into adventures, turning laughter into echoes. Some dreams were bright, filled with candy fields and shining crowns. Others were darker forests glowing with fungi, faces that vanished when he reached for them. But whether bright or dark, the dreams belonged to him. And through them all, the voices remained, watching, guiding, waiting. The child slept, the house creaked, and the night folded in around him. Laughter was gone now, but its echo still warmed the walls. Shadows lingered in corners, but their patience was soft, never cruel, only endless, only waiting. And so, in the balance between light and dark, Finn's childhood nights unfolded. Gentle, strange, whispering. The night deepened. The laughter of the day faded into silence, and the house grew still. Finn lay beneath his blanket, eyes half closed, breathing slow. Yet the dark was not empty. It never was. The walls held voices. They were not loud, not clear, but soft, like the rustle of dry leaves. They whispered to one another, pausing, starting again, as if they had all the time in the world. Finn listened. His young heart beat steady, but his skin prickled with the weight of their presence. He could not make out the words, yet he felt them. They pressed against the edges of his mind, slipping into dreams before they had fully formed. The fire in the hearth had burned low. Its last embers glowed red, casting faint shadows on the walls. But when the fire sighed its final breath, the shadows did not leave. They stayed, Tall, thin, leaning closer. Their edges were too sharp for moonlight. Their movements too patient to belong to wind. One stood by the door. Another leaned near the window. And one lingered near his bed, stretching long fingers across the floor. They did not touch him. Not yet. They only watched. Jake stirred once, snorting softly in his sleep. The shadows recoiled, sliding back and curling into corners. But when Jake stilled again, they crept closer, inch by inch, as if testing the boy's courage. Finn pulled the blanket higher. He whispered to himself, "I am not afraid." But his voice trembled, and the words sounded small against the endless patience of the dark. The whispers grew louder. They no longer hid in the cracks of the house. They filled the air, weaving above his head like threads of smoke. Some were low and humming, others high and brittle. Together they formed a chorus. Not angry, not kind, only ancient. In his half-dreaming mind, he saw visions. A forest glowing with pale fungi, faces with hollow eyes, a river black as ink. The images flickered, rising and falling with the rhythm of the whispers, until Finn no longer knew if he was awake or already lost in the dream. He turned onto his side, and for a moment, the whispers stopped. The silence was heavy, pressing, as though the entire house held its breath. Then a sound, soft, deliberate. The creak of a step on the wooden floor. Too slow for Jake, too careful for Wen. Something was moving. Finn kept his eyes shut tight. The sound came again, closer this time. Creak, pause, creak, pause. It stopped at the edge of his bed. For a long while, there was nothing. Only the faint hiss of the night. Then a whisper, clear, closer than ever before. It did not say his name. It did not form a word. It was only a breath, drawn out, lingering beside his ear. Finn's chest rose and fell, slow, careful, as though his stillness could keep him hidden. The whisper faded, but the air beside him remained cold, colder than the rest of the room. He knew something waited there. He knew it watched. Minutes stretched like hours. At last, a soft weight pressed against the bed. Not Jake still snored by the fire. This was lighter, stranger. It sank the blanket just enough for Finn to feel it. A hand? A shadow? He did not know. But then, as quickly as it came, the weight lifted. The whispers faded back into the corners. The shadows slid once more across the walls, melting into silence. Only the sound of Jake's steady breathing remained. Finn opened his eyes. The room was empty. The moonlight fell across the floor, soft and pale. No figures, no hands, only shadows that belonged to wood and stone. But his skin remembered the chill. His ears remembered the whisper. His heart remembered the patience of the dark. He curled closer to Jake, drawing comfort from the warmth of his friend. And slowly, with the whispers hidden once more in the corners, sleep claimed him. Yet even in dreams they lingered. The shadows, the voices, the breath at his ear. They followed, waiting, patient, endless. The days of childhood passed gently, filled with running, with laughter, with Jake's voice calling him back for supper. But the nights carried their own lessons. Finn began to notice the rhythm of the whispers. They were not random. They followed him like a heartbeat. In daylight, they hid, resting in the silence between footsteps. But as soon as night returned and they stirred again, curling around his dreams, slipping into his thoughts. Some nights, they only murmured, like winds brushing through tall grass or the sound of rivers far away. Other nights, the whispers sharpened. They grew closer, clearer. He thought he heard words, then ancient, crumbling words that slid through his ears like smoke. He could not repeat them. He could only feel them. And with those words came visions. When he closed his eyes, the world of ooh transformed. The meadows where he had played became vast fields of bones. The trees turned hollow, their trunks filled with dark eyes that blinked without faces. The rivers, once sweet and silver, flowed thick and black, bubbling with voices that never reached the surface. Finn would walk through these dreamscapes alone, barefoot, just silent, his small figure swallowed by endless shadows. The whispers guided him, urging him deeper, never forward to safety, but downward into mystery. Sometimes he dreamed of staircases, spiraling underground, steps worn by countless feet. He would descend, one step at a time, his hand brushing against walls cold as ice. The whispers always waited at the bottom. He never saw them, but he knew they were there, watching, waiting. Other nights, he dreamed of the forest where he had been found. But in these dreams, the fungi glowed brighter, their colors too sharp, too alive. The branches above bent low, arching over him like cages. And from the shadows of the trunks, figures leaned forward, not human, not beast, but something in between. They never moved quickly. They never spoke aloud. But their silence pressed against him, like a second heartbeat. In every dream, Finn carried his sword, not because he wanted to fight, but because he knew the whispers expected him to. They pushed him, tested him, shaped him. Every shadow that crept closer, every hollow face that bent near was another lesson. Be still. Be brave. Do not look away. And though he was only a child, he obeyed. His hand did not tremble. His breath did not break. He met the shadows with steady eyes, and slowly they began to retreat. In the waking world, this courage lingered. The forest no longer frightened him. The caves no longer made him shiver. When strange shapes drifted in mist, he stared until they vanished. When whispers rattled in empty corners, he listened until they grew quiet. Jake did not understand. To him, the night was a place of rest. But to Finn, the night was a teacher. The whispers were not enemies. They were something else, something old, something that saw in him the makings of a hero. One night, as he lay awake, the whispers grew so loud that the room itself seemed to pulse. The shadows bent, reaching from the ceiling, stretching across the walls. He felt them brush against his skin cold, but not cruel. They curled around him like a cloak. And then, for the first time, he heard them speak clearly. Not words, not a language, just a single sound. Low, heavy, like the toll of a bell in the distance. The sound rang once, then silence, then again. Each time, his chest trembled, his bones vibrating with its weight. He did not move. He did not cry. He only listened. When the final toll faded, the shadows receded. The whispers fell silent. The air warmed, and Finn drifted into sleep. His dream softer than before, filled not with terror, but with stars. From that night forward, he knew something had changed. The shadows had tested him, and he had not turned away. The whispers had entered his heart, and he had listened. He was still a child, but his courage was no longer pretend. It was real, carved from silence, woven from whispers, born of haunted nights. And in that strange, terrible beauty, the hero's path began to shine. The sun rose over the land of Uru, painting the fields in soft gold. Children's laughter carried on the breeze, and the forest sang with the sound of morning birds. To anyone else, the day was pure and bright. But for Finn, the night's lessons lingered. He could still feel them, curling at the edges of his thoughts. The whispers did not vanish with sunlight anymore. They stayed. Quiet but steady, like breath on the back of his neck. Sometimes, while walking with Jake, Finn would pause, tilt his head, and listen. Jake would ask, "What's up, bro?" But Finn could never explain. He wasn't hearing voices. He was feeling them, like shadows pressed into his bones. At first, it was small things. Shadows stretched the wrong way. Footsteps on the path behind him, though no one was there. Leaves rustling in patterns too precise to be wind. Each time, his heart skipped, but his courage held. He was learning. The whispers were teaching him not only in dream, but in the waking world as well. One afternoon, he wandered into the forest. The sun shone bright through the branches, turning the leaves into glass-green light. It should have been safe. It should have been peaceful. Yet halfway down the path, everything stopped. The birds fell silent. The wind held its breath. Even Jake's voice grew distant, like he had stepped far away, though Finn could still see him nearby. The forest had frozen. And in that silence, the whispers rose. They were not faint this time. They were close. So close that Finn's skin tingled, his ears filled with their layered murmur. He turned slowly and saw the trees bending. Their shadows stretched long across the dirt, not toward the ground, but toward him. The darkness crawled, slow and patient, curling around his feet like vines. Finn froze, his small hands tight around the wooden hilt of his practice sword. The vines thickened, twisting, forming shapes. A hand, a face, empty eyes staring up at him from the dirt. The whispers deepened, a chorus of voices overlapping, urging him, "Test yourself." "Do not look away," Jake barked, snapping the silence. The vines recoiled, sliding back into the earth, leaving only patches of harmless shade. The forest breathed again. Birdsong returned. But Finn knew what he had seen. He knew it was not just dream. The whispers followed him for days after. Not every moment, but in flashes. A shadow flickering just beyond the corner of his eye. A reflection in water that lingered too long. At night, the shapes returned stronger. No longer only voices, but forms. They gathered at the foot of his bed. Tall, hollow figures, with arms that brushed the ceiling. They did not touch him. They only stood, their eyes black, their mouths stitched closed. And yet, he could still hear their whispers, as if the sound came not from their throats, but from the walls of the world itself. Each night, they grew closer. Each night, the whispers pressed harder into his chest. The air grew heavy, the room colder. But Finn did not break. He sat up, looked directly at them, and whispered back into the silence, "I'm not afraid." And though the figures did not move, he saw something change. Their shadows flickered, their mouths trembled, and the whispers softened, just for a moment. That night, he dreamed of fire, not a warm hearth, but flames stretching high into the sky. Ruins burned, and towers crumbled. He saw himself walking among the wreckage, his sword glowing white in his hands. The whispers surrounded him, not in warning, but in welcome, as though the shadows were not enemies, but companions, guides that had been waiting for him to understand. When Finn woke, the room was still dark. Jake slept soundly at his side, but at the foot of the bed, there remained a single shadow. It did not vanish when he blinked. It did not fade with the coming dawn. It stayed, patient, silent, watching. And in his young heart, Finn knew, the line between dreams and waking life was gone. The whispers had crossed it. And his life would never again belong only to daylight. The night fell heavy, the moon was hidden, and the stars seemed dim, as though something vast and unseen had draped its cloak across the sky. Finn sat awake in his bed, and though his blanket gathered to his chest, Jake was nearby, breathing deeply in sleep, his warmth steady as always. But the air around them was different tonight. Thicker, colder, waiting. The whispers began softly, just as they always had. But tonight, they grew sharper, their edges slicing through the silence. They rose and fell in patterns, chant-like, pressing against his mind until his head ached with their weight. The shadows lengthened. At first they crawled only along the walls, stretching high, forming shapes of towers and gates. Then they pooled onto the floor, thick as black water, seeping towards the bed. They reached for him. They did not stop this time. They did not hesitate. The bed groaned under an unseen weight. The air bent cold, frost creeping across the wooden boards. And from the dark pool at the foot of the bed, a figure rose. It was taller than the others. Its form barely human, limbs too long, spine bent at strange angles. Its face was a hollow mask, smooth and eyeless. Yet Finn felt its stare pierce straight through him. The whispers hushed. The room fell silent. And then the figure spoke. Not with a mouth, not with sound, but directly into Finn's chest. A voice, low and echoing, vibrating through his bones. Do not pretend. We know you. Finn gripped his blanket tighter. His sword, a small wooden toy lay by his side. He reached for it slowly, and his hand trembling. The shadow tilted its head, its body shifting like smoke. The air thickened, and Finn felt his lungs strain, as though the room itself wanted to keep him from breathing. Stand, the voice rumbled. Prove yourself. Finn's feet touched the cold floor. The wood bit into his skin, numb and sharp with frost. He held his little sword before him, his arms shaking under its small weight. The figure stepped closer. The room bent around it, across walls stretching higher, shadows deepening, as though the house itself had become part of the trial. The figure raised its arm. From its hand, uncoiled tendrils of black smoke, curling, writhing, sliding toward him. Each tendril whispered, each one carrying a different voice, a child's laugh, a mother's sigh, a cry of sorrow. They wrapped around his arms, around his chest, pressing him down, testing, weighing his spirit. Finn gasped, but he did not fall. His small body trembled, yet he stood his ground. He raised the wooden sword, and though it was fragile, Though it was only play, he swung. The sword cut through the tendrils. The whispers shattered, breaking into hundreds of echoes that filled the room with shrieks. The figure staggered back, its hollow face cracking, splitting open down the center. And for the first time, Finn saw what lay within, not eyes, not a mouth, but a void. Endless, hungry, a tunnel of nothing. The sight pulled at him, dragging his spirit forward, threatening to swallow him whole. He felt his body tilt, his soul slipping, sliding toward the emptiness. But then he remembered Jake. He remembered laughter. He remembered the warmth of sunlight, the safety of home, the love of those who kept him. And with that memory, he pulled back. He screamed, a sound raw and small, but sharp enough to cut through the void. The shadow reeled. The room shook. The tendrils recoiled into smoke. The figure collapsed, melting back into the pool of darkness until it vanished into the cracks of the floor. The whispers fell silent. The cold lifted. The house sighed, its wood groaning, its walls settling, as though it too had been holding its breath. Finn dropped to his knees, his sword clattering beside him. His chest heaved. Tears burned at his eyes, but he did not let them fall. He was afraid, but he was also proud, for he had faced the shadow, and he had not yielded. Jake stirred awake, stretching with a yawn. "Everything okay, bro?" he mumbled. Eyes still heavy with sleep. Finn nodded softly. "Yeah, just a dream." But he knew it wasn't only a dream. The whispers had tested him. The shadows had challenged him. And though he was only a child, he had stood that night. As he lay back down, the silence felt different. Not empty, not hostile, but watchful, respectful. As if the shadows themselves had bowed to the courage of a boy. The trial was over. The figure of shadows had fallen back into the floor, its whispers scattering like ashes in the wind. But its presence did not vanish. It lingered. It lingered in the air, in the walls, in Finn himself. That night was the quietest he had ever known. No whispers, no footsteps, no cold hands brushing the edge of his blanket. The silence was heavy, but it was not empty. It was watchful. It was waiting. Finn closed his eyes, his body heavy with exhaustion. But his dreams did not come easily. When they did, they were unlike the others. Not forests of hollow faces. Not staircases spiraling into darkness. Not rivers of black water. This time, he stood in an open field beneath a sky of endless stars. The air shimmered with pale light, the ground soft and warm beneath his bare feet. He was not afraid. For the first time in many nights, he felt peace. But then, the stars shifted. They bent, turned, and arranged themselves into shapes. 10 of them glowed brighter than the rest, forming a circle above his head. And from that circle, a voice rose, not many whispers this time, but one. Clear, steady, ancient. You are chosen. Finn lifted his face to the sky. The stars pulsed, their glow sinking down, falling upon him like silver rain. Each drop burned cold, searing into his skin, soaking into his bones. He gasped, but he did not run. He let the light mark him. He let the night claim him. When he looked down, he saw the mark upon his chest. A faint glow, shaped like a spiral, turning endlessly inward. It faded quickly, but the warmth of it stayed. He pressed his small hand to the spot, feeling the hum beneath his skin. The voice spoke again. You will walk in shadow. You will walk in light. Neither will release you. Both will shape you. Both will need you. The field darkened. The stars bent low, their light dimming, their voices falling silent. And Finn stood alone, marked, bound, a child no longer untouched. When he awoke, the spiral mark was gone. No glow, no scar, only memory. Yet he knew it remained within him and etched deeper than flesh. The whispers returned that night, but they were different now. Not testing, not taunting. They spoke like companions, low, steady, guiding him toward sleep, their tones almost like a lullaby. He did not flinch at their sound. He did not hide beneath his blanket. He listened. And when he closed his eyes, he whispered back, a quiet promise into the dark. I will not fail. The shadows stirred, curling at the edges of the room, wrapping the boy in their patient embrace. And though the night was still haunted, though the voices still lingered too long, there was comfort now. A strange comfort. The kind that comes when one accepts that the dark will never leave, and perhaps is not meant to. In that balance between laughter and whispers, between warmth and shadow, between childhood and destiny, Finn's path was set. He was marked by night. He was claimed by whispers. And the haunted silence of his childhood would echo in every step of the hero he would become. The forests of Ooh were never silent. By day, they rustled with wind and songbirds, their trees bending gently, their leaves flashing bright with sunlight. But by night, the forest changed. Its heart slowed, its breath deepened. It became something alive, something watching. Finn knew this well. The whispers of his childhood had prepared him, taught him to listen, to stand still when others might run. Now, as he stepped into the forest's dark canopy, he felt both the weight of fear and the steady beat of courage. The moonlight fell in broken beams and cut by branches that twisted like reaching arms. The ground was soft, moss swallowing his footsteps, roots rising like bones beneath the earth. Each step carried him deeper, further from the safety of home, further into the heart of the unknown. Jake padded at his side, sometimes stretching tall to peek above the trees, sometimes shrinking small to curl at Finn's feet. His presence was comfort, but even Jake seemed uneasy. Every so often, his ears perked, his eyes darted to a shadow where no movement stirred. The forest whispered. Not words this time, but sounds, the breaking of twigs in the distance, the sigh of leaves with no wind, the faint drip of water where no stream ran. It was as though the forest itself spoke, in riddles too ancient to understand. Finn's heart pounded, but he did not stop. He pressed on, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword, a real one now, and no longer wood, but steel that shimmered faintly in the moonlight. It hummed in his grip, as if sensing what lay ahead. Deeper still they walked, until the trees thickened, their branches knitting together to block the sky. The air grew cold, and the silence grew louder. Here even Jake felt quiet, his paws soft, his eyes wide. At last, they reached a clearing. In its center stood a tree, older than the rest, its bark black as ash, its branches twisting into shapes that looked too much like hands. At its base yawned an opening, a hollow mouth in the trunk, leading down into darkness. Finn felt it before he saw it pull. A pressure. The same presence that had whispered through his childhood, now waiting, calling. The hollow was no simple cave. It was a threshold. A door to something hidden. Jake whined low. Finn, this place feels wrong. But Finn only tightened his grip on his sword. I know, he whispered back. That's why we're here. He stepped forward, and the earth soft beneath his boots. The shadows at the hollow's edge stirred, curling like smoke, stretching toward him as if eager to taste his courage. The air was thick, his chest heavy with the weight of it. But he did not stop. He entered. Inside, the dark swallowed him whole. The forest sounds fell away. Even Jake's footsteps seemed distant, echoing oddly, as though the hollow belonged to another world. The air smelled of earth, damp and ancient, and beneath it something metallic, like blood left too long on stone. The passage narrowed, forcing Finn to crouch, to crawl on hands and knees. The whispers returned, not around him, but within him, curling through his ribs, sliding into his ears. They did not frighten him. Not anymore. Instead, they tested him. Will you go deeper? Will you face what waits? And Finn answered by moving forward. At last, the passage opened into a chamber. The walls pulsed faintly, as though alive, their roots glowing with dim green light. Shapes lingered in the corners, not entirely shadows, not entirely solid. They swayed, their heads tilting, their forms stretching longer than they should. In the center of the chamber stood a pool, its surface black and still, though no ceiling reflected upon it. It seemed bottomless, an opening into somewhere else. Finn stepped closer, his reflection rising faintly in the water. But it was not his face. Not fully. The eyes were hollow. The mouth stretched too wide. The reflection smiled, though Finn did not. Jake growled, but Finn only stared. His reflection leaned forward, its whisper sliding from the pool itself. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the walking through it. The words echoed in his chest, burning, branding themselves into his heart. The reflection dissolved, the pool rippling once, then stilling. The chamber quieted. The shadows receded, melting back into the roots. Finn stood tall, his breath steady. He had not fought. He had not fled. He had only faced. And the forest had answered. When he stepped back into the clearing, the night air felt lighter. The branches no longer reached, and the silence no longer pressed so heavy. The forest watched still, but with a different gaze. Not mocking, not testing, respecting. Finn lifted his sword, its steel catching a fragment of moonlight through the canopy. His courage had grown, and though the dark would never stop whispering, he now carried something stronger within him. The clearing behind him faded, swallowed by the twisting trees. The moonlight that had slipped through the canopy was gone now, replaced by blackness thick as tar. Only the faint hum of Finn's sword kept the dark from swallowing him whole. Jake walked close, his fur brushing Finn's arm. But even Jake, brave and loyal, was trembling. He whispered low, "Something's following us." Finn nodded. He had felt it too, a weight in the air, a rhythm in the shadows. Not whispers this time, but footsteps. Soft, deliberate. Always behind, never ahead. He turned once. The forest stretched silent, trees bending like watchers, their branches dripping with pale moss. No eyes stared back. No form shifted in the dark. But Finn knew. He knew. They pressed forward. The path narrowed, roots twisting into shapes that clawed at their boots. The forest smelled of wet earth and of rot, of something metallic and sour. The deeper they went, the more the forest breathed a long, slow inhale, a long, slow exhale, as though every tree shared the same lungs. Then came the laughter. At first faint, like the creak of branches in the wind. Then sharper, clearer, high-pitched and broken. Children's laughter, echoing through the woods. Jake froze, his ears flattening. "That's not right," he muttered. The laughter grew, circling them. It came from every direction, bouncing between trees, layering upon itself until it became a chorus. And beneath it, something crawling, something dragging. From the shadows, figures emerged. Small at first, shapes of children, their faces pale, their eyes black. They giggled, their mouths stretching wide, teeth too sharp. Jake growled low, but Finn lifted his sword. He did not swing. He only stood tall, the steel catching what little light remained. The children creatures circled, their bare feet silent on the forest floor, their laughter rising and falling like the waves of the sea. Then, without warning, one rushed forward. Its body moved, wrong limbs jerking, neck twisting too far. It stopped inches from Finn's face, its breath cold, its grin wide. It whispered, "Brave, brave. Are you brave enough to stay?" Finn did not flinch. His hand tightened on the hilt, but he did not strike. He held the creature's gaze. "I'm not leaving," he whispered back. The creature's grin faltered. The laughter around them slowed, breaking into coughs, rasps, and sighs. The circle tightened. Jake shifted nervously. "Finn, maybe we should bounce." But Finn shook his head. "No, they're testing me. That's all." The creatures leaned closer, their pale faces inches from his own, their whispers flooding the clearing. "Stay. Stay. Prove it. Prove it." The air grew heavy and so thick Finn could barely breathe. His chest ached, his vision blurred. The laughter had stopped entirely now, replaced by a low humming of sound that rattled his bones. Then the largest of them stepped forward, taller, its body stretched thin, its arms long enough to drag along the ground. Its face was blank, only a mouth, stitched wide across its head. When it spoke, its voice was many voices, layered and broken. Bravery is not words. Bravery is staying when every bone begs you to run. It raised its long hand, a finger pointing toward the trees. From the darkness beyond, something shifted, something massive. A shape that moved without sound, its form lost between branches, its eyes glowing faint white. The children creatures stepped back, their laughter returning, but softer now, taunting, inviting. The test had only begun. Finn's sword hummed louder, as though sensing the thing approaching. His heart pounded, but he forced himself to breathe slow, to steady his stance. He whispered to himself, to the shadows, to the forest that had always haunted him. "I'm not afraid. I will not run." The massive shape drew closer, branches snapping under its weight. The forest bent with its movement, trees groaning as if pushed aside. Its breath came heavy, a sound like the grinding of stone. And when it finally stepped into the clearing, the laughter fell silent. It was not beast, not man. Its body was stitched from branches and bone, its eyes empty sockets glowing faint. Moss dripped from its jaw, and in its chest, something pulsed faintly, a red glow hidden deep within. It lowered its head, its face inches from Finn's. The ground trembled. The whispers returned, not many this time, but one. Low, steady. From the creature itself. "Show us." Finn tightened his grip, his sword gleaming faintly. His fear burned in his chest, hot and wild. But beneath it, courage stirred. The courage to stand. The courage to face. The courage to walk deeper into the dark. And so, he did not run. He did not swing. He lifted his sword high, its light catching the red glow within the creature's chest, and he spoke aloud, his voice firm despite the shaking of his hands. "I am not afraid of you. Not of the dark, not of what waits inside it. I will walk through it. Always." The forest held its breath. The creature loomed. And in the silence that followed, the true trial began. The stitched giant stood in silence. Its hollow eyes burned pale white, its chest pulsing with a faint red glow. The forest around it seemed to lean closer, trees groaning, roots curling through the earth as though eager to watch. The children creatures circled, their laughter hushed, their pale faces tilted upward, waiting. The giant's shadow fell over Finn, stretching long, swallowing him whole. Finn's sword hummed louder, its glow flickering like a heartbeat. He felt it in his hands, in his chest, echoing his fear, echoing his courage. Jake whispered low, "Finn, this isn't just a monster. This is something else. Something older." The giant leaned down, its stitched face inches away. Its mouth opened, splintering as bark and bone cracked. From its hollow throat poured not a roar, but whispers. Thousands of them, layered and overlapping, curling around Finn's ears. They spoke in unison. "Bravery is not standing still. Bravery is knowing what you are." Finn's breath caught. The red glow in the giant's chest brightened, casting shadows across the trees. And from the glow, the whispers pulled something out. A shape. Small. Familiar. It stepped into the clearing. A boy. Barefoot. Clutching a wooden sword. His eyes were wide, his smile faint, but his skin pale as ash. It was Finn but hollow. A shadow carved from his own fears. Jake gasped. "Bro, it looks like you." The shadow Finn tilted its head. It lifted its wooden sword, though its blade dripped black liquid, thick as tar. When it spoke, its voice was Finn's own, but broken, distorted, as though echoing through water. "You are afraid. You have always been afraid. You wear courage like armor, but inside, you are hollow." Finn stepped back. His heart raced. The children creatures giggled softly, their laughter skittering like insects. The stitched giant loomed, waiting, watching. The shadow Finn stepped closer, its tar-dripping sword dragging along the ground. "You cannot fool us. You cannot fool yourself. Every night you tremble. Every whisper shook you. You are not brave. You are weak." Finn's chest tightened. He remembered the nights, the shadows at the foot of his bed, the whispers pressing into his skull, the way he pulled his blanket tight around him. Yes, he had been afraid. Yes, he still was. But he had faced it. Every time, he had faced it. Step by step. Night by night. He had not run. Finn raised his sword. I am afraid, he said. His voice trembled, but he forced the words out. I always will be. But that doesn't make me weak. It makes me brave. The shadow Finn hissed, its smile stretching too wide. It lunged forward, its tar blade cutting through the air. Finn met it, steel clashing against wood. The sound was louder than thunder, echoing through the forest. The fight was swift, but it was not just a clash of blades. It was a clash of selves. Every strike carried whispers. Every block carried fear. The shadow moved too quickly, its blows heavy, its laughter cruel. Finn stumbled, his arm aching, his sword ringing with each hit. The children creatures cheered, their voices sharp, their pale hands clapping. Jake barked, snapping at the edges of the shadow, but his teeth met only smoke. At last, the shadow knocked Finn to the ground. Its tar blade pressed against his chest. Its face leaned close, eyes black and endless. You are nothing, it whispered. You are only fear. Finn's breath shook. He looked into the hollow eyes, into the reflection of himself twisted by darkness, and he smiled. Then let me be fear. But I will still stand. With a cry, he drove his sword upward, steel meeting the shadow. The tar blade cracked. The shadow shrieked, its form unraveling, splitting into smoke and ash. It dissolved into the air, sucked back into the giant's chest. The children creatures fell silent. The stitched giant trembled, its red glow fading to embers. It leaned back, its stitched arms lowering. And for the first time, its whispers softened. You have named your fear, and in naming it, you are stronger than it. The giant's form crumbled, branches snapping, bones shattering, until only roots remained, curling back into the soil. The forest exhaled, its breath slow, its gaze softer. Jake hurried to Finn's side, tail wagging nervously. Dude, you did it. You faced yourself. That was spooky, but awesome. Finn rose slowly, his sword still glowing faintly in his hand. His chest ached, his body shook, but his heart was steady. The forest had tested him. Not with monsters, not with shadows, but with himself. And he had not run. The stitched giant had fallen. The shadow self had dissolved. The children creatures had scattered into smoke. The forest was quiet now. Too quiet. Finn stood in the clearing, his sword still warm, its steel glowing faintly in the dark. The silence pressed heavy, but no longer frightened him. It felt respectful, as though the forest itself had bowed its head. Jake nudged his arm. Come on, bro. Let's get out of here before it changes its mind. Finn nodded. Together they walked, the path winding back through the trees. The roots no longer clawed at their boots. The branches no longer reached. The laughter was gone. The whispers silent. But silence, Finn knew, did not mean safety. The deeper they walked, the heavier the air grew. Every step forward felt like dragging through water. Every breath thick. The forest was not releasing them easily. Behind them, footsteps echoed. Not quick, not chasing. Slow, measured. Like something patient, something watching. Jake stretched tall, his eyes peering over the trees. Nothing up there, he whispered. But his tail tucked low, and his ears twitched nervously. Whatever followed them did not show itself. It only followed. They pressed on. At last, the trees began to thin. Moonlight spilled through, silver and cold. The forest edge appeared ahead, a promise of open air, of safety. Finn almost smiled. But then the whispers returned. Not distant, not faint, but inside his chest, inside his head. Do you think leaving the forest ends us? Do you think courage is only needed here? We walk with you, child. We always will. The air grew colder. Shadows stretched unnaturally, curling around Finn's feet, climbing his legs like vines. Jake barked, snapping at the dark, but his teeth met nothing. Oh, the shadows only shifted, sliding back, then forward again. Finn froze. His breath clouded in the cold night. The moonlight dimmed, though no clouds passed. It was as if the world itself bent inward, narrowing, trapping them in a circle of dark. And from that circle, faces appeared. Not the children creatures, not the stitched giant, but others, hundreds of them, pale, hollow, eyes black and endless. They lined the trees, their whispers overlapping, their voices rising into a chorus. We do not stay in the forest. We live in you. Every step you take, we will follow. Every night you close your eyes, we will be waiting. Courage is not a single trial. It is forever. Jake pressed against Finn's side. That doesn't sound like a good thing. But Finn's heart did not falter. He lifted his sword, its glow steady in his grip. He stepped forward, out of the shadow circle, toward the edge of the forest. The faces leaned closer, their whispers rising. Do not leave us. Do not forget us. You are ours. Finn stopped at the tree line. He turned back. He met the endless, hollow eyes, the crowd of whispering faces. And he spoke, his voice quiet, but strong. I won't forget. I know you'll follow. And that's fine, because I'll keep walking anyway. The whispers faltered. The faces rippled, their mouths twitching. The chorus broke into silence. Then, one by one, they sank back into the trees. The shadows thinned. The air lightened. The moon shone clear. Finn stepped out of the forest. The grass of the open field stretched before him, soft and silver in the night. The sky opened wide, stars endless above. Jake exhaled deeply, his body shrinking back to normal size. Man, I thought we'd never get out of there. Finn lowered his sword, the glow fading to nothing. He stared back at the tree line. It loomed dark, its branches still twisted, its silence still heavy. But he no longer feared it, because he knew the truth now. The dark would never stay in the forest. The whispers would never be left behind. They lived within him, and courage would be the path he walked for the rest of his days. The wind shifted, the grass swayed, and from the distance, so faint it could almost be mistaken for memory, the whispers rose once more. We walk with you, Finn smiled, and stepped into the open night. The open fields stretched wide under the night sky. The grass brushed against Finn's boots, silver in the moon. The night was deep and quiet. The forest behind Finn and Jake had stilled. But something still shimmered faintly in the dark. Not the stars, not the moon. It was the blade. Finn's sword lay across his lap. Its steel glowed faintly, a soft silver glimmer like moonlight trapped in metal. He ran a hand over its edge. It hummed under his finger, slow, steady, like a voice too quiet to understand. Jake snored in the hammock. The fire crackled low. But Finn could not sleep. The sword pulsed faintly with light, as if breathing, as if waiting. He remembered how it had cut through shadows, how it had glowed against the stitched giant, how it had stood steady, even when whispers filled the air. But tonight, its glow was different. Not protective, not comforting. Something older, something heavier. Finn leaned closer. And then, so soft he thought, it might be a dream, the blade whispered. "Do you hear them, Finn the human?" His breath caught. The voice was inside the steel. Not loud, not kind, not cruel, just ancient. He glanced at Jake. "Still asleep, still snoring." Finn whispered back, "Who's there?" The glow brightened, a faint pulse through the room. "Not who, what?" "The battles etched within me, the hands that held me, the blood that stained me. I remember what you do not." Finn's hand tightened around the hilt. "You're alive?" "Not alive, not dead. I am memory, I am hunger, I am waiting." The room grew colder. The fire dimmed, though no wind touched it. The sword trembled faintly in his hands, not from weight, but from will. Finn stared into its glowing edge. Shapes flickered in the steel knot, reflections of himself, but faces. Unknown warriors. Men, women, creatures long gone. Eyes hollow with rage. Mouths twisted in screams. Battles he had never fought, but the sword had. The whispers grew louder. "We remember. We are remembered. And now you carry us. Will you be strong enough?" Finn's heart thudded. He wanted to set the sword down, to turn away. But his hand refused. The hilt clung to him, binding, pulling him deeper. The glow filled the room. The walls of the treehouse melted into darkness. Jake vanished into shadow. The fire was gone. Only Finn and the sword remained. The whispers overlapped, a chorus of countless voices. "Carry us, wield us, become us." And as the blade pulsed brighter, Finn saw not his reflection anymore, but himself on a battlefield, older, bloodied, facing horrors he had never known. The sword glimmered, its light both guiding and consuming. And Finn realized, with a cold shiver, that the weapon he trusted was not simply his. It had its own story, its own will, its own hunger. The whispers sank into his chest. "Sleep now, Finn the human. For when you wake, the secret will be deeper." The glow dimmed. The treehouse returned. Jake stirred softly in the hammock. The fire popped faintly. Finn lay back in bed, the sword across his chest, its steel cold, its whisper lingering. "We remember." And slowly, eyes heavy, Finn drifted into uneasy sleep. Finn's sleep was not his own. He dreamed of standing on a field, not the soft grass of ooh, but broken stone, shattered earth. The sky was red, a low burning crimson that bled across the horizon. The air reeked of iron, of ash, of blood. And in his hand, the sword glimmered. Not silver now, oh, not gentle moonlight, but slick, its edge dripping dark. He staggered back, gasping, looking down at himself. He wore armor he had never seen before, strapped to shoulders broader than his own. His reflection in the steel was older, scarred, eyes shadowed. Not Finn. Not exactly. Around him, The battlefield screamed. Figures clashed in the red haze, their cries torn apart by the clang of steel. Shapes moved too quick, too monstrous. Limbs twisted, mouths stretched wide. And always, the sword pulled him forward, dragging him into the heart of violence. Voices rose from the blade, layered, overlapping. Strike, cut, end them. We remember. We hunger. Finn stumbled, his boots crunching over bones, half buried in the dirt. He tried to drop the sword, but his hand would not open. The hilt burned cold against his palm, a brand of iron. The first enemy, Kamia's shadow beast, with teeth of stone. Its roar split the sky. And before Finn could even raise his arm, the sword moved. It swung with strength, not his own. The blade cut deep. The beast fell. The whispers rose, screaming in triumph. Urcha, yes, yes, strike again. This is our memory. This is our blood. Finn staggered back. His breath came ragged. The beast dissolved into ash. But already another loomed. Then another. Endless. Each time, the sword moved. Each time, the blade sang. Each time, the whispers howled. Strike. Cut. Remember? Finn's mind blurred. The battlefield melted into one long moment of slaughter. He was no longer himself. He was every hand that had ever held the sword. Every cry, every kill, every drop of blood. His heart thundered, and still the sword drank deeper. At last, he fell to his knees, the world spinning. The ground beneath him slick with crimson. Not his. Not theirs. Everyone's. He gasped for air, but the whispers pressed tighter, wrapping around his skull, sliding into his chest. You are us. You cannot set us down. Every battle we fought is yours now. Every scream we heard is yours now. Every shadow we cut is yours now. Finn clutched his head, eyes wide. No, I'm not you. I'm not... The sword pulsed bright, blinding white, and the battlefield froze. All around him, the figures turned. Not enemies, not allies, just hollow-eyed warriors, some human, some beast, some things he could not name. Their mouths opened in silence, but the whispers poured out all the same. We are the sword. We are the battles. And now, so are you. The ground split beneath him. The battlefield crumbled. The sky tore open, red bleeding into black. And Finn fell down, down into the dark. The whispers followed, curling tight around his throat. Carry us, or be carried by us. He gasped and woke. The treehouse ceiling loomed above. The fire had gone out. Jake still slept, snoring softly. The sword lay across Finn's chest, cold, silent, still. But when he lifted it, its edge glimmered faintly, and in the steel he saw not his own face, but the hollow eyes of the warriors he had just killed. Finn turned the blade away, breath shaking. The silence pressed heavy. The dream was gone, but the blood was still there. He could feel it, on his hands, in his chest, in the whisper that lingered just beneath the silence. We remember. And now, so do you. Morning came, but the light did not feel warm. The sun spilled through the windows of the treehouse, catching on dust, painting soft gold across the wooden floor. Jake stretched lazily in his hammock, yawning wide. Morning, bro. You look like you didn't sleep at all. Finn sat on the edge of his bed, the sword across his lap. Its steel gleamed faintly, not with sunlight, but with something colder. something that did not belong to the morning. He forced a smile. Yeah, just weird dreams. Jake shrugged, already padding off toward the kitchen. That forest mess will do that to you. I'll make us some flapjacks. Finn nodded, but his hand never left the hilt. It was as though the sword had grown heavier overnight, anchoring him. And beneath the kitchen clatter of Jake's cooking, he heard it. A whisper. Awake and still we remember. Awake and still you carry us. Finn gritted his teeth. He tried to ignore it. He stood and walked to the window. The bright fields of ooze stretched wide, peaceful, beautiful. But when the sunlight touched the blade, the view flickered. The grass turned to ash. The sky bled red. The trees were blackened stumps. And in the distance, their warriors clashed again, screaming, dying. Finn blinked, shaking his head. The vision snapped back. Green fields, blue sky. All was calm. But the sword whispered, "Do not deny what we are. We bleed into every day. We stain every light. There is no morning without our memory." Finn's grip tightened. He wanted to throw the sword and to fling it out the window, to let it sink into some forgotten pit. But he knew it would not let him. It would always return. The weight in his hand proved it. Jake's voice called from the kitchen. "Yo, pancakes are ready." Finn slid the sword aside. He forced himself to join his brother. They ate together at the table, Jake chatting cheerfully, Finn nodding quietly. But each time Finn raised his fork, the steel edge of the sword flashed in the corner of his eye. And with each flash came another vision. Blood dripping down the walls, a hand severed and twitching on the table. Jake's cheerful face hollowed, his smile sewn shut. Then, just as quickly, the vision's gone. Finn dropped his fork. His hands trembled. The whispers coiled tight in his skull. "See what we have seen. Eat with our hunger. Dream with our violence. You are us now." Jake frowned. Dude, you okay?" He looked pale. Finn forced another smile. "Yeah, just tired still." But his hand slid back to the sword. He couldn't stop himself. The hilt was cold, but familiar, like it had been waiting for him. The rest of the day blurred. He and Jake went outside, walking through the meadows. The air was bright. Birds sang. But the sword dragged its weight at Finn's side, and with each step, the whispers grew louder. Every shadow hides an enemy. Every friend hides a weakness. Every day hides a battle. Strike. Strike before it strikes you. Finn's gaze flicked to the grass, and for a moment, he saw it soaked in blood. The birds above screamed like dying men. Jake walked ahead, whistling, tail wagging, and in the flicker of the sword's steel, Finn saw him cleaved in half, his smile frozen, his body falling. Finn gasped, stumbling. Jake turned, confused. "Bro, what's wrong?" The vision snapped away. Jake stood whole, eyes bright, ears perked. Finn swallowed hard. Nothing, just tripped. But inside, his heart thundered. The sword pulsed in his grip. The whispers pressed. That night, Finn did not even try to sleep. He sat at the center of the treehouse, the sword across his knees, its glow faint but steady. The fire had burned down to embers. Jake lay curled in his hammock, snoring softly. But Finn could not rest. The visions of the day clung to him. Each flicker of the blade showing blood, death, faces he did not know but somehow carried. Every time he blinked, he saw a battlefield. Every time he closed his eyes, he smelled smoke and ash, At last, he clenched the hilt in both hands. His voice cracked the silence. Enough. You keep showing me things. Whispers. Blood. Battles that aren't mine. Why me? Why now? The sword pulsed faintly in response, a ripple of cold through the air. The whispers began, low and overlapping. Because you listen. Because you carry courage. Because you do not run. Finn's jaw tightened. That's not an answer. What are you? Where did you come from? The glow brightened. The air thickened, pressing against his chest, his throat. The fire dimmed to nothing. The treehouse walls faded. And once again, he was pulled elsewhere. The ground beneath him was stone, black and cracked. Above, a sky of endless gray. Clouds twisted into faces that never blinked. At the center stood an altar. And on that altar, the sword younger, untouched, its steel flawless. Figures knelt around it. Not humans, not beasts. Shadows wrapped in cloth, their eyes glowing faintly from within. They chanted, their voices a rhythm of hunger. Born from silence, born from war, born to remember, born to hunger. One figure reached forward, its hand pale, its veins black. It gripped the blade. Its scream tore the air open. The sword drank deep, its steel glowing, feeding. The figure collapsed into dust. Another stepped forward. Then another. Each offered themselves. Each consumed. Each memory bound to the blade. Finn staggered back, eyes wide. What is this? The whispers rose all around him. Not in his ears, but in his bones. We are sacrifice. We are offering. We are battle given form. Every life poured into us. Every death remembered. 1,000 hands. 1,000 screams. 1,000 wars. The altar crumbled. The shadows turned, their glowing eyes fixed on him. Their mouths opened wide, and their whispers became a single voice. And now, you. Finn dropped to his knees. The sword burned in his grip, searing, but still he could not let go. He shouted into the void. I didn't choose this. I didn't ask for this. The voice swelled, rising like a storm. No one chooses. No one asks. The sword chooses. The sword hungers. And now, you carry us all. The sky cracked. Light poured down, blinding. But inside it, he saw faces. Warriors. Children. Creatures. Everyone bound. Everyone screaming. Everyone inside the steel. Finn's chest tightened, his breath ragged. He tried to look away, but the light seared into his eyes and into his skull. The sword pulsed. Its whisper slid cold into his ear. You are the next altar. You are the next memory. When your blood spills, we will drink, and you will join us. The ground gave way. Finn fell into endless black, the sword still burning in his grip. He gasped and woke. The treehouse ceiling above. Jake still sleeping. The fire still out. But the sword glowed faintly on his lap, its edge humming. Finn's hands trembled. His heart pounded. And in the silence, the whisper lingered, soft, inevitable. We are sacrifice. And one day, so will you. Finn could not touch the blade. Not after what he had seen. Not after the altar. Not after the screams. For 2 days, he left it where it lay, on the floorboards of the treehouse, wrapped in a blanket, hidden from sight. Jake asked, Dude, aren't you going to carry it? What if we run into trouble? Finn shook his head. I don't need it. I can fight without it. Jake frowned. but didn't push. He trusted Finn. He didn't hear the whispers. He didn't feel the weight. But Finn did. Every hour, every breath. The sword did not stay silent. Even wrapped in cloth, its hum filled the treehouse. A low vibration through the floorboards, through the bed frame, through his bones. At night, it whispered louder, "Do not hide us. Do not deny us. We are yours. You are ours." Finn pulled the blanket tighter around his ears. He told himself he could resist. He told himself it was only a weapon. But the air grew colder each night. The shadows thicker. The whispers closer. By the third night, the treehouse itself began to change. The walls warped. The ceiling stretched higher. Jake slept soundly, unaware, but to Finn's eyes, the wood turned black, wet with dripping crimson. He staggered back from his bed. "No, it's not real." But when he touched the wall, his fingers came back slick. Blood. Warm. Fresh. The whispers surged. "You cannot cast us aside. We are in the wood. We are in the air. We are in you." Finn stumbled to the window. The meadow outside was gone. In its place stretched the battlefield again. Ash. Fire. Bodies piled high. The sky red, choked with smoke. Jake's hammock swung gently. But now it was not Jake. It was a corpse. His skin gray, his eyes hollow, his mouth stitched shut. Finn cried out, uncovering his face. "This isn't real! You're not real!" But the sword's voice slid beneath his hand, into his skull. "What is real without us? Your world is paper. Your peace is illusion. We are truth. We are hunger. Take us back. Hold us. Let us breathe again." The blanket burst open. The sword rolled free across the floor, his gleaming silver in the bleeding dark. Its edge pulsed like a heartbeat. Finn pressed against the wall, shaking his head. "No, I won't. You just want to feed. You just want me broken." The sword pulsed brighter. The visions twisted tighter. Jake's corpse leaned forward, stitched mouth opening wide. From it poured a scream that wasn't sound, but vibration, rattling the boards, splitting the air. The battlefield bled into the room. Flames licked the ceiling. The air was restless that evening. Wind rolled across the plains of Ooh, carrying the smell of rain and something sharper, a metallic tang, like iron. Finn walked the path with Jake at his side, and the sword strapped across his back. It hummed softly, not in warning, but in recognition. It seemed to know something was near. Jake's ears flicked. "You feel that, bro? Like someone watching?" Finn nodded. His hand hovered near the hilt. "Yeah, we're not alone." From the tree line ahead, a figure stepped into view. Small, cloaked, its face hidden beneath a hood. It moved slowly, deliberately, and when it spoke, its voice was thin, like wind through hollow wood. "You carry the blade." Finn stiffened. "Who are you?" The figure tilted its head. "Not enemy, not friend, but bound to the same hunger." The sword's hum deepened, resonating with the figure's words. Finn's skin crawled. You know about this sword?" The hood fell back slightly. A pale face, eyes ringed with black, too wide, too still. Its smile stretched thin. "I have carried it too." Finn's stomach dropped. He stepped back. "That's not possible. It's mine." The figure's smile did not waver. Yours, yes, but not first, not last. Every hand that holds it becomes one of us. And still we walk. Still we whisper. Jake growled low. Creepy. I don't like this guy. But Finn couldn't look away. The figure raised a hand, showing its palm. Faint scars ran across it, long, jagged, shaped like the grooves of a hilt. I was its companion. I fed it. I bled for it. And when my body failed, I lingered. Now I am Shadow. The sword pulsed. Its whispers slid against Finn's ear. Do not fear. They are kin. They are memory. They are us. Finn clenched his jaw. I don't want kin like this. The figure's head cocked again. Want or not, you already walk with us. But you need not walk alone. The forest behind the figure stirred. More shapes emerged. Some small, some towering. All cloaked. All silent. Dozens. Shadows of former bearers, their hollow faces glowing faintly from within. Jake's fur bristled. Finn, we should really bounce. But the circle tightened around them. The whispers of the sword merged with the voices of the shadows, a rising tide of sound. Carry us. Trust us. We will guide you. We will never leave you. Finn's chest ached. He tried to breathe, but the air was thick, choking. The shadows closed in, their eyes like coals. Their hands reached out, not to strike, but to touch, to cling. Jake barked, snapping at the nearest shape. But his teeth passed through it, biting only air. The figures leaned closer, their voices twisting together into one. You are light. We are shadow. Together, we walk forever. Finn drew the sword. Its glow cut through the circle, forcing the shadows to stumble back. For a moment, their forms wavered, flickering like smoke. But their whispers did not fade. Instead, they grew sweeter, soothing, almost kind. Do not fear us. We are your companions now, not enemies, not ghosts. Companions? Forever. Finn's grip tightened. Sweat ran down his temple. Were these allies? Or chains? Were they guiding him? Or binding him tighter to the curse? The shadow smiled with one mouth, and so one voice. Light and shadow, two halves, one journey. You are never alone, Finn the human. Never again. And the forest fell silent, the circle watching, waiting, their loyalty as sharp as their hunger. The shadows did not vanish. After that night, they remained at the edge of Finn's vision, trailing him through the forests, hovering in the corners of fields, drifting silently across the hills. They never touched him again, not with hands, but with whispers. Step left. There's a pit. Wait. A beast lurks ahead. Turn. Safety lies this way. And they were right. Every warning saved him. Every whisper led him away from danger. Jake noticed, his eyes darting suspiciously at the empty air. You're hearing them, aren't you? Finn hesitated. Yeah, but they're helping. Jake frowned. I don't trust it, dude. Nothing that creepy ever helps without wanting something back. Finn nodded. But he couldn't deny the truth. The shadows kept him alive. Without them, he might have stumbled into beasts, traps, chasms. With them, his path seemed clearer. But the clearer it grew, the stranger the world became. The first time he noticed it, they were walking through the meadows. The grass was tall, the sky bright. Then the shadows whispered, closer, look again. Finn blinked. The meadow shimmered. And suddenly, the tall grass was not grass at all, but bones. Endless white stalks of femurs and ribs, jutting from the ground like a field of death. Jake yelped, stumbling back. "What the lump is this?" But when Finn blinked again, the bones were gone. Just grass. Just flowers swaying in the breeze. The shadows murmured. Truth is layered. We peel it back. We show you more. The second time, they were near the mountains. The path ahead seemed empty. But the shadows whispered. "Look closer." Finn squinted. The rocks shifted. Faces emerged from the stone. Eyes hollow. Mouths open wide in silent screams. Dozens. Hundreds. The mountains were not rock at all, but bodies petrified or frozen in agony. Jake growled, tail low. "Finn, this isn't right. You can't trust them. You're seeing what they want you to see." But Finn's heart twisted. If this was truth, then hadn't they saved him? Hadn't they guided him safely through places where others would have fallen? He tried to ask them. Tried to demand answers. "What do you want from me? Why are you helping me?" The shadows whispered back, a chorus rising from every direction. "Because you are ours. Because we are yours. Because alone you are prey, but together you are predator." The forest around them seemed to lean closer. The branches creaked like bones. The air grew colder. Finn's grip tightened on his sword. Its hum blended with their whispers. And for a moment, he felt strong. Not just Finn, the human, but Finn with 100 shadows at his back, guiding him, watching him, waiting. But Jake's paw pressed against his arm. "Bro, listen to me. This isn't you. You don't need them. You've never needed them. Don't let them in." Finn swallowed hard. The whispers filled his skull. Jake's voice pulled at his chest. Light and shadow, friend and phantom. Which was true? Which was lie? The shadows swayed together, their cloaks like black waves, their eyes burning dimly in the dusk. And as one, they whispered, "We are your companions, Finn. We are the only ones who will never leave you. Even when the light dies, even when your friends fall, we remain." Finn's breath shook. The meadow darkened. And with every step, the shadows walked closer, closer, until their forms seemed almost solid beside him, their feet brushing the grass, their faces too near to ignore. Friends or chains, allies or parasites. And in the silence of his heart, the sword hummed with approval. The shadows followed Finn everywhere now, not just at the edge of sight, but close. So close, they brushed against his shoulders, their whispers never leaving his ears. Jake hated it. He snarled at them, snapped at the air, but his teeth only closed on emptiness. And every time, the shadows laughed soft, low, like 100 throats chuckling together. One evening, as the sun bled orange behind the hills, they reached the ruins of an old stone keep. Its walls were crumbled, its halls hollow. But the shadows stirred, pressing close, their whispers sharper now. "Enter. There are enemies inside." Finn froze. He could hear nothing. "See nothing?" The keep seemed abandoned. Jake narrowed his eyes. "I don't smell anyone. Just dust." But the shadows insisted, their voices weaving around Finn's skull. "Step forward. Strike before they strike you. We will show you where they hide." Finn hesitated. He had seen what they could reveal before the hidden pits. the unseen beasts. What if they were right again? He gripped his sword. The hum in its steel matched their whispers. It wanted him to obey. "Jake, maybe we should check." Jake growled. "Bro, don't. That's them talking, not you." But Finn's feet carried him forward. He stepped into the keep, the air cold, stale. Shadows pooled thicker along the broken stones, stretching into the corners. And then faces appeared, pale, hollow-eyed, watching him from the dark. "See, they wait for you. Strike now. Cut them down." Finn's breath caught. Enemies or illusions? He couldn't tell anymore. The sword's hum rose. His grip tightened. The shadows pressed harder. "We kept you safe. We showed you truth. Now obey us. Strike, Alma. Feed us." Jake barked, rushing forward. "There's nothing there, Finn. Look at me. There's nothing." But Finn's eyes burned with doubt. The figures in the ruin shifted, their mouths opening wide, their arms reaching out. They looked hungry. They looked real. The shadows' voices swelled together, thunder in his ears. "Strike them down. You owe us. We kept you alive. Now repay us. Repay us in blood." Finn raised the sword. Its edge glimmered, not silver, but crimson, as though dripping. Jake leapt, slamming into Finn's side, knocking him off balance. "Snap out of it, man. You're about to swing at nothing," Finn gasped. He blinked, and the faces vanished. The ruins were empty. Just broken stone. Just silence. His hands shook. The sword hummed low, displeased. The shadows hissed, their voices bitter now. "You resist. You doubt. Do not forget who saved you. We are not free. We are not silent. We demand." Finn dropped to his knees and clutching his head. The whispers clawed at him, accusing, demanding, never stopping. Jake stood over him, teeth bared, fur bristling. "Get out of his head. He doesn't owe you squat." But the shadows only laughed, a hollow chorus echoing through the ruins. "He owes us everything. And one way or another, we will be paid." The laughter lingered, long after the sun dipped below the horizon, long after the ruins grew dark, long after Finn realized he could not silence them anymore. Night swallowed the land whole. The ruins lay behind them, but the shadows did not. They moved with Finn now, closer than breath, their whispers rising and falling like waves. "We saved you. We guided you. Now you must feed us. Feed the blade. Feed the shadow." Finn stumbled through the forest, his eyes sunken from a lack of sleep. Jake padded close, trying to keep him steady. "You're burning out, bro. You gotta shut them out. They're twisting you." Finn's grip tightened on the sword's hilt. I'm trying, but they're so loud." The whispers hissed. "We are not loud. We are truth, and truth cannot be silenced." Ahead, the forest opened into a clearing. Moonlight spilled across the ground, silver and pale. And in the center stood a creature small, hunched, its fur matted, its eyes glowing faintly. It sniffed at the earth, digging with long claws. A beast, or something worse. The shadows whispered, urgent now. "There, it hunts you. It waits to strike. End it now." Finn froze, his heart hammered. He could see it, the claws or the teeth. It looked like a monster. Jake sniffed the air. He tilted his head. "Finn, I don't smell any danger. That's not a monster, dude. That's just, The whispers cut him off, all their chorus rising like a storm. It will kill you. It will kill your brother. Strike first. Strike now. Finn raised the sword. Its glow brightened, casting long shadows across the clearing. His knuckles whitened on the hilt. Jake stepped in front of him. Finn, wait. Look closer. It's just... The whispers screamed, now! Finn lunged. The blade flashed. Moonlight caught on steel. A single swing. Clean. Silent. The creature dropped without a sound. Its body crumpled to the ground, its glowing eyes dimming. Finn stood trembling, his breath ragged. He looked down. Not a monster. A small deer. Its fur soft, its eyes still open in shock. Blood pooled in the grass, dark and warm. Jake gasped. Oh, Glob, Finn, oh, what did you do? Finn dropped to his knees. The sword hummed, pleased. The shadows swirled around him, their voices sweet and low. Good. You obey. You strike. You feed us. More. More. Finn's stomach churned. His hands shook. He had trusted them. He had believed their warning. And now a life lay at his feet, innocent, dead. He clutched his head, shouting into the dark. Stop. Get out of me. I'm not your killer. The shadows only laughed, their forms flickering like flames. You are already ours. You carry us. You swing us. Every cut makes us stronger. Every cut makes you weaker. And soon, there will be no difference between us at all. Jake stepped forward, placing a paw on Finn's shoulder. His voice was quiet and but fierce. Bro, listen to me. This isn't you. It's them. They're using you. We'll figure it out. We'll break it. But you gotta fight. Finn stared at the deer's body, his throat tight. He could still feel the hum of the blade in his hands. It wasn't hunger anymore. It was satisfaction. The shadows pressed close, their whispers curling like smoke around his face. Do not more. Do not hesitate. The first is the hardest. The next will be easier. Finn's eyes burned. He whispered back, his voice hoarse. No, never again. But deep inside, he could feel it, the sword's hunger, the shadow's hunger waiting for the next cut. The forest never seemed to end. Days bled into nights, nights into days. Finn walked with his head low, the sword heavy at his side. Each step felt stolen, as though he wasn't moving by choice, but by command. Jake stayed close, but even his warmth couldn't cut through the chill that clung to Finn's skin. He hadn't slept in days. Not really. Every time his eyes closed, they were there. The shadows. They gathered at the edge of his dreams, watching, sometimes whispering, sometimes laughing. And sometimes they took his own voice and spoke it back to him. I am you. You are us. We are one. Finn would wake with his throat raw, unsure if the words had come from his dreams or from his own mouth. Jake noticed. You're slipping, man. I can see it in your eyes. They're crawling inside you. Finn pressed his palms to his temples, shaking his head. I can't shut them out. Even when I'm awake. They're louder now. It's like they're under my skin. The sword hummed softly, like a lullaby. Almost kind, almost gentle. But Finn felt the truth. It wasn't singing to him. It was singing through him. The whispers followed, low and constant. Do not resist. The blade remembers. We remember. You are only the newest hand, the newest vessel. Finn stumbled, falling to his knees. The grass beneath him blackened, curling as though burned. Jake rushed forward. Finn! What's happening? Finn lifted his hands. His skin shimmered faintly, not with light, but with shadow. Black veins spidered beneath his flesh, pulsing, spreading. The whispers coiled around him, inside him. You carry us now, not beside you, not behind you, inside you. Finn screamed, clutching his chest. The sound echoed strange, as if a dozen other voices screamed with him. Jake dug his claws into the earth, panic in his eyes. Don't let them win, bro. You're stronger than this. Fight them. But Finn's voice cracked, layered with something inhuman. I can't. They're everywhere. And then the shadows showed him. For a moment, his vision split. One eye saw Jake, pleading, desperate. The other eye saw only the shadows, their faces, their cloaks, their hands reaching. They stood where Jake stood. They breathed where Jake breathed. They wore his brother's shape. He is not your friend. He is a chain. He will pull you back into the light. Cut him. Free yourself. Finn's hand moved toward the sword. The hum rose, vibrating in his bones. The whispers surged, a flood in his skull. One strike, one cut. He will not suffer, and you will be free. Tears burned in Finn's eyes. His fingers tightened on the hilt. Jake's voice broke through the storm, soft but fierce. Finn, it's me. It's your bro. Don't listen. Please, come back. The sword trembled in Finn's grip. The whispers screamed, writhing inside his head. He is not real. He is not light. He is only shadow in disguise. End him. End him. Finn raised the blade, his arm heavy and his body trembling. Jake didn't move. He only looked at him, eyes wet, voice cracking. I trust you, man. Even if you don't trust yourself right now, I know you're still in there. Finn's chest heaved. The shadows shrieked. The forest tilted, darkness pressing in. For a breathless moment, the world hung silent. The sword above Jake's head, the whispers clawing at Finn's mind. Then Finn dropped the blade. It clattered against the earth. The hum faded. The shadows screamed, their voices twisting into rage. Weak, faithless, unworthy. Finn collapsed into Jake's arms,